Hey everybody, it's RJ, your host, and welcome to Hash It Out. In this episode, I'll be speaking with Akele Parnell of Lantern about how social equity can fit into the corporate identity of cannabis companies and Lantern's social equity incubator programs currently operating in multiple US states. We'll also discuss the minutiae of real social equity, the sense of empowerment that comes with providing individuals with business and entrepreneurial opportunities in the cannabis industry, and more. Without further ado, let's hash it out. My guest today is the head of equity partnerships at the cannabis marketplace and home delivery service Lantern. Welcome to the show, Akele Parnell. Hello, sir. How you doing today?
Hey, RJ, how's it going?
It's going well, man.
Nice to meet
Yeah,
you.
you as well. You as well. Thank you so much for sitting down and having a conversation with me today. I really appreciate you sharing all that you've got going on over at Lantern, and then going into some of the wider cannabis trending topics discussions here in the U.S. But first and foremost, where are you joining us from today? Where in the wild world are you?
So I'm in Chicago, Illinois, on the northwest side, Humboldt Park
Nice.
neighborhood. That's where I'm at.
Dig it, man. I'm originally from Michigan myself. I spent the first 20 plus of my formative years in Michigan, so I'm right there. Have y'all been getting that lake effect winter yet?
Yeah, we got it. I mean, we actually had like our coldest day of the year on Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday or Monday. Sorry, actually, it was a Monday, and it was like 19 degrees or 10 degrees or something like that. At that point, you just like stay in the
Yeah,
house.
yeah.
So yeah, we're getting it, but then it's gonna be like 50s later this
That's
weekend.
what.
So I don't really global warming is still doing
Yeah,
stuff. I don't know what's
yeah. I
going
know.
on.
It's like that new climate just dropped or whatever. But it bites different out there, man. So yeah, I'm glad to see that you are staying warm and staying sheltered. Just diving in here to talk more about Lantern and all you've got going on over there. For those who may not be familiar, Lantern is an on demand cannabis marketplace and home delivery platform, as I mentioned, that provides access to local cannabis dispensaries and products for recreational customers and medical patients alike. As head of equity partnerships, I'm just curious. Tell me more about what you do at Lantern to foster that social equity, which is, of course, of the utmost importance, and is certainly something that we need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, for sure. So at Lantern, like social equity is one of our like core ethos, both in terms of how we operate internally, but then also how we develop and grow our business. And so my position as head of equity partnerships is pretty much tasked with developing, the company strategies and initiatives to drive equity in each new market that we work in, and ensuring that like our business development goals and other sort of business strategies are aligned and help create and drive social equity in new markets. And so what that ends up looking like is us starting social equity incubator programs in new states. So we have launched incubators in every state that we've been in so far. And so in Boston, Massachusetts, we actually incubated the first delivery licensees to be licensed in the state of Massachusetts. They came through our incubator program. We've had about 3 or 4 cohorts so far. Also in the state of Michigan, we actually partnered with a company, a Black woman-owned company called Colexium, to launch an incubator called the Detroit Cannabis Project in Detroit, which became like the official technical service provider for the city of Detroit. And so really excited about that. A ton of energy, ton of participation with that, and of course, partnered with the city. So really proud there. And then in Colorado, we partnered with the Color of Cannabis to launch delivery incubator, delivery licensee incubator there too. And so proud of that. And now that we're moving into New Jersey and New York, we're launching incubators there. And we actually just announced the application round for our New Jersey incubator called the New Jersey Cannabis Project. And then we'll be launching the New York Cannabis Project here in 2022. And so super excited. Those are the main things. But then our equity strategies also touch on a lot of other stuff, and a lot of that is still developing and growing. And so definitely like, you know, stay tuned, keep a lookout for what we're doing in 2022. It's going to go beyond the incubators. But, it's one of our core ethos, something everybody from the top to the bottom in the company is passionate about. And so we spend a lot of time on it.
Certainly. And, that was certainly something that I picked up on just when researching yourself as well as Lantern and all that y'all really focus on as a company over there. Social equity was certainly a consistent through line in all that I was seeing in my research on y'all. Um, the discussion of social equity in the cannabis industry has certainly been an ongoing one ever since the onset of legalization and the legitimization, is that the right word? Yeah, sure, of the industry. However, for some, I feel like what exactly social equity is might be lost in the discussion, because some people might think that it's more or less just making sure we reserve some business licenses for people of color, for entrepreneurs who perhaps were formerly incarcerated, and just like making sure that they have a share. But what exactly does social equity mean in the cannabis industry that goes beyond just making sure that we have like a fraction of licenses set aside?
Yeah, yeah. So I think, people use social equity now as sort of like a catch-all for any sort of like social justice related or equity related work in the industry. And so that's why, stuff like, expungement clinics and record clearing and all that stuff gets lumped into the same conversation around business licensing, and equity in the marketplace. And so when I think about social equity in the cannabis industry, like in the industry, not in, legalization as a whole, because a lot of,
Right.
cannabis legalization is not about the industry per se. When I
Right.
talk about the cannabis industry, a lot of that does focus on ensuring that the communities most harmed by the war on drugs, Black communities, brown communities, are able to build wealth in the industry and hold a sizable piece of the market share. And so, social equity as a term, at least means that, communities that have been most harmed by, the war on drugs and things like that have access to everything they need to flourish in the industry. It's not necessarily like, equal results in the end or whatever the case may be, but certainly working and pushing towards that. And the goal would be to sort of rectify past harms. And a lot of that has to be focused on wealth creation because the war on drugs extracted so much wealth from Black and brown communities in particular, through a variety of different means. And now that we're here legalizing cannabis, Black and brown communities have always been at the forefront of ensuring that people could, access cannabis, particularly folks in their own communities. But were
Yeah.
singled out and targeted unfairly for racial motivations that had nothing to do about drugs and preventing people from
Hmm.
accessing cannabis. And so now that it's time
Hmm.
to legalize that, we can't go ahead and go forward with a legalization framework that ignores all that, ignores all the economic and social destruction that's happened from that, and then just allow certain groups that were privileged during the war on drugs and during this whole American, democratic, and during the history of this entire country, and just allow them to sort of build on those advantages to create more wealth and exclude others. And so social
Mm.
equity is really about rectifying things in the past, leveling the playing field, giving everyone what they need, and ensuring that everyone is building wealth in this booming industry.
Certainly, yeah, that was very well said. Certainly, leveling the playing field, I think, is an oversimplification of it, of course, but it's certainly of the utmost importance with the growing nature of the cannabis industry. We need to make sure that those who upheld the market before it was legal are included and given the same level of opportunities as those who, like you said, may have a certain level of privilege and are now benefiting from almost an expedited process towards the top of the industry food chain. Going back and speaking of sort of this corporate identity that y'all have over at Lantern that focuses on social equity, you were quoted as saying it is integral to our corporate identity to create a path for individuals targeted by the drug war to build successful companies, create generational wealth, and rebuild their communities from within, which I think is a really great specifier there. So, with that said, how do you think corporations can be convinced then to err on the side of humanity and equity as opposed to corporate profit and motive. How can one company sort of bridge that divide or strike that balance?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for the leadership in the company, the founders. It's really got to start with those folks, from the beginning. You have to decide that that's important to the ethos and sort of soul and mission of their company.
Mm,
If it's just about profits and it's not about, there's no social mission or sense of responsibility to society and to people and to the communities they serve, then maybe they could sort of just ignore that. But I think any cannabis company that wants to get started and be socially responsible has to take these things seriously and has to have some sort of plan for ensuring that the communities most vulnerable on drugs can benefit and build wealth and find opportunity in the industry through their own business. And so
mm,
that looks like I think it's important for those employees to be able to obtain equity in the company. Ensuring that we're taking folks, returning citizens, and people with criminal records or justice involved individuals are able to find opportunities in new cannabis companies. In addition to supporting the growth of businesses in the cannabis space that are Black and Brown owned by people that are justice involved, who come from families that are justice involved, and also supporting, broader criminal justice reforms and supporting increased access to the plant, particularly in communities where it's more difficult for them to maybe access medicinal cannabis or a lot of these new
mm.
products that are in dispensaries and, the price points and all that kind of stuff, or sometimes just unaffordable for a lot of folks. And so I think all those different things have to be a part of not just a CSR plan, but core to the mission of the company and how they think about growth and how they expand.
Certainly, I'm wondering if you feel the same way as me, because I don't know if it's just wishful thinking, but I feel like in the cannabis industry and in the cannabis community in particular, um, the people that make up cannabis consumers are sort of uh, more aware than most, and can usually do a decent job of like sussing out the genuine companies or the companies with genuine intentions, as opposed to the ones who are sort of taking this, I guess, quote unquote, like culture vulture route, or sort of trying to leverage a community involvement for company gain. I'm wondering if you feel that if you feel that too in the cannabis community and industry. Are people able to suss that out? And at what point is it the company's responsibility if they aren't being sussed out by the community?
Yeah, I agree. I think consumers in the cannabis space, and particularly, those conscious consumers, which I think are going to be like a growing segment of consumers or portion of the cannabis consumer base, really really care about that, and they care about how their cannabis is grown. They care about who grows it. They care about who benefits, and that consciousness is only going to increase. And so, companies that, a lot of companies are starting to come to terms with that and realize it. I think in the beginning, a lot of companies were just like ignoring that. And there's like, here's weed, here you go, everybody come get this. But
Sure.
now it's like, okay, we need, there needs to be some sort of social responsibility and mission, social mission to what we're doing here. And whether that's on, environmental sustainability or criminal justice reform or racial equity and social equity and all that stuff. And the companies that have come up with sort of just cheap attempts to sort of appeal to those conscious consumers. I think they see that, and consumers see that, and they respond appropriately. And I don't think they get a lot of mileage out of it. Even if you get a sort of short-term thing, eventually, those sort of cheap attempts to appeal or play on, sort of our social consciousness ends up not working. And
Hmm.
consumers are smart. And so I think, certainly in the long term, it's going to be the companies that are really sincere about this and thoughtful about, how to engage and connect with conscious consumers and how to find some sort of purpose driven element or incorporate some purpose driven elements into their products and branding and in their business model.
Mm. And speaking of which, getting back to some of the initiatives that Lantern is responsible for, I understand that in October of this year, Lantern launched, as you mentioned previously, its fourth social equity incubator program, the New Jersey Cannabis Project, which seeks to provide social equity entrepreneurs with the skills, knowledge, and resources needed to succeed and become leaders in the emerging New Jersey cannabis industry. So tell me more about the two parts, I guess, that make up the program, and then what it does specifically to focus on both the pre and post licensing process.
Yeah, so yeah, like you said, the New Jersey Cannabis Project, this first cohort, we'll have several cohorts. It's not going to be a one-time thing, but the programming is generally divided into two parts. And the first part is the pre-license program, where it's focused on sort of laying the groundwork for building a business in the cannabis industry and navigating the application process. And so that's the sort of pre-license part. And we'll go into a little bit of detail about what all that involves. And then the post-license part is for incubatees that come through the program and are able to win a license. Most of the states that we're going to be in are going to be in, these sort of competitive licensing programs where not everybody can win a license. And so for those that are lucky enough and, put in the blood, sweat, and tears and are lucky enough to get one, we'll have a second part where there's also that, there's an educational component, there's technical support, we'll provide mentorship, we'll have like a resource database, and also provide networking opportunities and help them grow their network because that can always help you grow your business. And so on the first part, we'll talk about everything from your basic business planning to finance, how to finance your business, how to structure your business, accounting. We'll talk about security planning. We'll talk about hiring. We'll talk about community engagement and integration.
Mm.
We'll talk about what social equity is. So all those different aspects, writing an application, putting it together. We're going to bring in experts in all these different areas. So experts in the cannabis industry, people that have done this for real, particularly lots of, black and brown and people of color that have been really successful in the cannabis industry so that our participants can see folks like them who have already been doing the things that they want to do and learn from them. Um, and so, yeah, we'll have all those folks as a part of the program, and we're really excited about it. We also have office hours so they can come in and ask questions and try to connect people with, capital. We'll provide some for the application process and all that, but also connect them with capital resources, with potential opportunities for real estate. If you're a retail shop, you're going to need a retail location. We have folks that have real estate, maybe need social equity partners or people with expertise. And so we sort of try to provide that. And so by the time that they're ready to stand up their business, they sort of went through this accelerated crash course in the cannabis industry and have sort of gained a whole lot of knowledge that maybe it took other folks, years to put together and stuff. And so they'll leave with best
Hmm.
practices and a really solid strategy to go out in the marketplace and win.
Certainly, and it's so important to educate. I've said it before on the show that the education never stops because I'm curious. Have you ever been surprised by someone who might come in and then realize, oh, there are much more steps to starting a business than I thought of? And what are some of the more, I guess, common topics that you see from aspiring entrepreneurs that they perhaps didn't expect would be a problem, particularly in the cannabis industry, which of course is a very unique industry and has very unique requirements and regulations that vary depending on which city or state you may be in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so I've been working with cannabis entrepreneurs for about 2 years now, and I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm a business owner myself. Own a business that won a cultivation and a dispensary license here in Illinois. We're
Yeah.
hoping to launch soon, and so I'm going through the process too. I'm learning as I'm like
Yeah.
helping other folks learn. Worked for another cannabis business that was a startup, it was really big. So like I've seen all that stuff. I mean, it just never stops on if you're a cultivator, all these aspects of like building like an industrial like manufacturing facility. I mean, there's just stuff that
Right.
never would have thought of. You think, hey, I just want to grow weed in a warehouse.
Right, right.
And it's not quite that simple. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and then in terms of like the regulatory stuff, I mean, you think, okay, the only really license I need is just like my cannabis business license, but then there's like all these other permits and things you need and zoning requirements and tax
Right.
things you have to deal with. I mean, it's like insurance. I mean, there's so many different things you have to think of. And then when it comes to sort of the financial planning around your business, You think you can just come up with like a basic sort of financial model and then go in and tell people, hey, we're going to make money, give it to me. And then you sort of get in there and realize like, no, they want like every single thing accounted for, like down to like the penny.
Right.
How much do the paperweights and the post-it notes cost that are going to be in your office building? How
Right.
many are you going to have? How many are you going to use and stuff like that? And so it can get really complex. It doesn't always have to be, but a lot of times that does
Yeah.
happen. And then in cannabis, people say this all the time, is just stuff is just harder. Not because it's harder to understand or figure out or it's rocket science, but just because of the regulatory barriers. It's a new industry and just all these unknowns. Regulators are sort of building the plane as they fly, and we're also trying to build our business, as
Hmm.
build a plane as we fly it. And so there's just a lot of unexpected and like unknown unknowns that come up when you're starting a cannabis business. So yeah, it's hard to tell
Totally.
people everything they need to know to do it.
Totally. Oh yeah, yeah. The devil is certainly in the details. More often than not. Speaking of offering though these tools and these resources and this ever changing and ever ongoing education for entrepreneurs out there, you mentioned that Lantern has also launched social equity programs in all of the states that y'all operate in, Massachusetts, Colorado, most recently Michigan, as you mentioned, the Detroit Cannabis Project, which was named the city's official technical assistance provider. I just want to ask you one final question here regarding just sort of the sense of empowerment that business opportunities give to people, because the governor of Michigan last month signed a bill that makes it so that people with cannabis related felony or misdemeanor convictions on their record are no longer disqualified from obtaining a medical cannabis business license, and that elected officials and employees of federally recognized tribes can also obtain a state cannabis license. So, tell me more about what you've seen the access to business and entrepreneurship opportunities such as that does for someone's sense of empowerment, particularly perhaps, for example, someone who has just gotten out of jail, who has done their time and is trying to reintegrate into society. What importance does those business and entrepreneurship opportunities? What importance does that hold for them?
Yeah, I mean these kind of reforms are super important, and I know they got to feel empowering. We should have done this a long time ago, particularly in the medical market. I know when I first started in the industry, in almost every single state, there were laws on the books or regulations that prohibited anyone with pretty much any sort of felony conviction, particularly cannabis felonies, from participating in the industry. And that had to be so demoralizing because this is an industry that literally you help sustain and build. The only reason that there's lines around the corner at dispensaries on day one of legalization is because folks in the unregulated market had been sustaining consumer demand for this product all these years and risking their freedom and being around their families and everything, risking their lives to connect people with this plant. And so
Hmm.
now that when legalization happens, all those people are just shut out, and we pretend like they're not the reason that we're doing this in the first place. And so to sort of start to rectify that and make amends, or at least acknowledge that it was wrong, is super important. And we got to continue to create pathways, in particular for people that are returning citizens, the ones that have really done time. And in most states, the social equity programs don't even include those folks, because it's
Right.
mostly just lower level convictions, minor possession and stuff like that can um, allows you to qualify as a social equity applicant. But, it should really, really be those folks that, this was their livelihood. And, it's important from a social equity, criminal justice, and racial justice perspective. So I love to hear that. It's a little late because the medical markets, for the most part, are already up and running in most places, but maybe new states will take a cue from what we're doing and see the mistakes that other states have made and fix that from inception. So
Mm, certainly. And in the meantime, as I mentioned to you before we started recording here, it is certainly a conversation and a discussion that we can't let slip away. We certainly have to keep it relevant and keep speaking about it and keep getting this education and that good word and these resources and tools out to the people who need them. So, Akili, thank you so much for your time. Oh, before we go, where can our viewers and our listeners keep up with all that y'all have got going on over at Lantern?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find us Lantern Now. You can Google us. It's the website, www.lanternnow.com. Lantern Now on Instagram. I think we got a Twitter too. I don't spend a whole lot of time on Twitter post Trump, but I think we're on there
Yeah,
too.
well, I feel that, feel. It is a lot more of a peaceful place now. I will mention that. Although, actually, no, I guess I could take that back. I was on Twitter this morning. I saw some pretty whack stuff. but yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much, Akele, for your time and your perspective and all the information. Please keep up all of the good work out there, and please continue to be well and stay safe, man.
All right. Thanks, you too. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, no problem. Akele Parnell, everybody. That is it for Hash It Out, y'all. Thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. I am your host, RJ Balde, and I will catch y'all in the next one. Peace out. Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out our channel. Click here to watch another episode of Hash It Out. To find more cannabis industry reporting, insider stories, and to stay up to date on the latest trends, make sure to subscribe and keep up with our TRICHOMES community app. Download it now for free, and we'll see you there.